Hello, good morning, and welcome back to the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me today is Ben Bocsak, and we're going to start by talking about Trent Alexander-Arnold's performance for England over the weekend against Malta. I know neither of us, Ben, watched all of the game, but we've both seen plenty of the highlights. Obviously, seen Trent's unbelievable goal. One of the standout things to me was the fact he was wearing the number 10 shirt for England. I thought that was a bit bizarre, but playing in midfield for Gareth Southgate as well now, and doing it pretty well by all accounts. Ben, do you think this means there's even more potential that he's going to be playing this role going forward next season for Liverpool?
Yeah, I think Liverpool's sort of transfer activity gives it away as well. When I've written about this for Liverpool.com, but McAllister's predominantly played on the left side of the midfield three. Thuram, who's being heavily linked, and we're going to talk about a bit later on, he's also predominantly plays on the left side. So it feels like Liverpool are sort of overloading that left side and leaving that right side alone a little bit. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. And that reason must be Trent Alexander-Arnold and his performances towards the end of last season. And, even now for England, yes, it was against Malta, but to be fair to him, no Liverpool player has scored from outside the box in the last 10 years. The last one was Steven Gerrard to do it for England. So that's pretty significant and remarkable. And, after the game, I think the pundits and he himself was saying this sort of new position allows him to get into more central roles where he can take shots. And, we've seen him do that with free kicks from set pieces, a couple of times from open play as well, cutting him from the right. But I think just in general, Liverpool haven't had a goal-scoring midfielder. And it looks like, you never know, Trent might be that goal-scoring midfielder based on his performance against Malta. But just based on his performances towards the end of last season, he was contributing with a lot of assists, and it definitely feels like he's made for that position. And he said it himself, he's getting more and more comfortable in the role the more he plays there. But then again, if that is going to be his future role, I think Liverpool are going to have to start thinking about potentially getting a right back.
Yeah, it was a great goal. I think it was pretty reminiscent of the goal he scored against Bournemouth in that 9-0, actually, just sort of on the right outside the box and puts it in the opposite corner. But as you mentioned there, I wanted to bring you on to the subject of right backs. Obviously, if Trent is going to make a permanent move into midfield, we don't know whether he'll be starting at right back and then move into that position like we sort of did back end of last season, or whether we'll set up with him in midfield come the first day of the season. Who knows? But yeah, I think if he is going to be starting in midfield, I think everyone agrees, like you say, that Liverpool are going to have to go out and probably buy a right back. Do you think they'd be looking towards sort of, Jurgen, Timber, Pavard, right backs who can also play centre back and sort of have that versatility to them as well?
Yeah, I think it was James Pearce who reported that Liverpool have kind of distanced themselves from Pavard, but Jurgen Timber is a link that makes sense, I think. We know Pep Linders loves to watch the Eredivisie, and he likes to keep an eye on his fellow Dutch talents. Obviously, Cody Gakpo was one who came in January, and I think Timber, while I don't necessarily feel that confident of him playing in a back four, but in a back three, I think as a centre back he could be very useful. And as a right back as well, he's someone who there's definitely more defensive, but definitely more attacking, more offensive than Joe Gomez, for example. So he can go forward. He's comfortable on the ball, and I think he would be good cover for Trent Alexander-Arnold if he plays in midfield. But if he plays in this new role as well, then in sort of a back three, I could see Timber sorting in alongside Konate and Van Dijk. He gives Liverpool, I think, a lot of options tactically. So would Pavard, but I think Timber he is slightly a bit more versatile. If I remember correctly, I think he's even dropped back a few times and played as a left back, so went across for Ajax and for the Dutch national team. So I think he just ticks more boxes. Probably a bit younger than Pavard as well. I mean, definitely a bit younger than Pavard. So that's another bonus for Liverpool, because I think the goal this summer is to reduce that aging squad. At the start of last season, there was some statistic that came out that Liverpool were the second oldest team in the Premier League. So that's definitely that should be an objective as well. Looking ahead to the future and building for the future.
Yeah, I wanted to bring you back to the goals from midfield issue. Obviously, Simon McAllister, I think he got 10 for Brighton in the league last season. Obviously, we've mentioned if Trent does move into midfield, we know he's got a great goal in him. He's great from outside the box. Do you think that those two alone, sort of moving into Liverpool's midfield, are going to be enough to solve Liverpool's issue of goals from midfield? Because obviously, it's not really something we've had in our game in recent seasons at all, is it?
I think with McAllister, if I remember correctly, some of his goals were from penalties, and obviously that means he's probably not going to be taking Mohamed Salah's penalty taking spot, so his numbers likely will reduce a little bit. I don't necessarily see him as a goal scoring midfielder, and with Trent as well. I mean, yes, he can score from outside the box, and if he does stay in this new role, that's going to be a feature of Liverpool's game for sure. But on a season, how often is he going to get into those spaces and be able to score? I don't know if it's going to be that regularly. I mean, like we said, it was against Malta. The opposition wasn't of the greatest quality, with all respect to Maltese national team players, but they're not quite at the Premier League or Europa League standard that Liverpool are going to be playing in. So I do think there's still probably room for a midfielder who can add goals. I think the last one we had who was that offensive midfielder and who could score goals regularly was probably Adam Lallana. I know people mention Coutinho a lot, but I always saw Coutinho as more of someone who plays in the front three, and he played a lot in the front three, so I don't necessarily see him being that much of a midfielder, but Adam Lallana, I think for sure, and that's the type of player I would like to see, and I don't think neither McAllister or Trent Alexander-Arnold is that type of player.
Yeah, and I don't think the guy we're going to move on to now is much of an Adam Lallana either. They certainly look a lot different. Kephren Thuram, all 6'3" of him. Obviously, Ibrahima Konate recently being asked some yes or no questions in an interview, was asked about the prospect of Thuram joining Liverpool and said, yep, he'd absolutely love to have him. First of all, I mean, in the wake of Jude Bellingham moving to Real Madrid after all of the flirting, is there any danger that we sort of give too much weight to comments like this, Ben? Obviously, they're France international teammates. It's obvious that he'd want him to sign for the club. Is there any danger that we're reading a bit too much into this one for now?
I don't know. I think it's interesting. With Thuram, it definitely seems like the links are more sort of credible than Bellingham. It doesn't seem like there's other teams interested in him. I mean, I'm touching wood here, let's hope so. But it does seem like Liverpool have more of a clear pathway, so to speak, a clear route to get him from Nice. He's obviously not as expensive, so I think the biggest hurdle for Bellingham and Liverpool was the price tag. I mean, maybe Bellingham would have been open to joining Liverpool, but at the price Dortmund were willing to sell him, it was just there's no chance Liverpool could afford that. But the kind of fees that are being talked about for Thuram, around 40 million euros, that makes him very affordable, and he's at that age where he's still relatively young. It just makes sense for Liverpool in a lot of aspects, and I think there's probably more to this than just the Kone trying to talk up his teammate.
Yeah, it certainly does seem like he's next on Liverpool's list. Obviously, there's been quite a pivot once we got McAllister in. It pretty much instantly switched over to Thuram, Kone. Everyone's focused on who's going to be coming in next. Are you happy that Thuram sort of appears to be where they're focusing their efforts right now? Yeah,
I think so. I think I like him as a player. I think he's quite versatile. He does something which not a lot of Liverpool midfielders do, which he is very good at progressing the ball. He gives a bit of physicality to that Liverpool midfield as well, which I think we lacked last season, and that's why sometimes the midfield was a little bit weak. So, yeah, I think he ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I think he'd certainly be a welcome addition. So here's hoping he is the next one through the door, and that it's pretty sharpish. So we've got something else to talk about on our morning streams. But yeah, that's going to do us for today. So Ben, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.